Valheim is one of the greatest survival games ever made. Its beautiful art style, satisfying combat, and seemingly endless progression has kept me entertained for almost 300 hours. Recently, a bunch of my friends and I started a Valheim server together. Some in the group had never played before, some had played part of the game, and a couple of us have played the game all the way through the Ashlands. Despite all of these different backgrounds, the same conversations and points of critique just kept coming up. Valheim is so close to being a perfect game, but it's just not quite there. When you're gliding into the Valheim map for the very first time, the first thing you're going to notice is the large, expansive world. You're gonna want to go out and explore and find all of these new structures and creatures and monsters. But despite this massive open world, the game is extremely linear. The linear structure as a whole is something I've seen a bunch of people complain about, but personally I think this is a very strong point of the game, as it gives you very clear goals since you know exactly which boss you're supposed to take out next. It's much better than them giving you 7 bosses and just saying, yeah, fight all these guys. Instead of having to make all sorts of decisions, they have the game completely mapped out for you. The issue with the linear progression is the execution. The game is structured almost like levels. I don't mind this as much in the late game biomes like the Mistlands and Ashlands, but in the first 5 biomes, the game just feels a bit awkward. Despite these first 5 biomes feeling somewhat grounded, the difficulty increase from biome to biome is extremely harsh and it exposes quite a few problems. Firstly, outside of maybe the plains, these biomes are all easy to stumble across. For first-time players that just happen to spawn next to a mountain, they're gonna feel disappointed when they're immediately hit with a freezing status effect and then get one-shot by a wolf. What could feel like a motivator to get stronger and better so that you can survive in these biomes, instead at times feels like an impossible climb. And when they realize that they're not even gonna be able to make a frost-resistant cape until they've already braved the swamp to get enough iron to make a pickaxe, and then are willing to brave the elevations of the mountains that spawn drakes and golems, and not to mention it's almost impossible to even find silver until you've taken out bone mass, it's gonna demotivate a lot of players that really just want to go out and explore these areas since it's so far away. Sure, you can make a bunch of frost-resistant meat early on, but this is one of many examples on Valheim forcing you to play a certain way. Don't get me wrong, I don't think that a player should be able to wander throughout the mountains without a care in the world, but the fact that you can barely even stand a chance until you've taken out the swamp in entirety is far too punishing and causes a lot of players to lose interest. This insane difficulty increase from biome to biome introduces another problem too. By the time you complete one biome, the biome prior now feels completely irrelevant. In game development, the goal of the game developer is to keep the player in a state called flow. This is the optimal state of engagement that keeps the player from feeling bored or overwhelmed. The flow formula requires a perfect balance between difficulty and skill. When you go into a biome that you're not meant to be in, you're going to feel overwhelmed and underskilled. This causes frustration for players and therefore a worse experience. On the other hand, if a game is too easy, then players are going to just straight up lose interest. The game gets boring. Valheim does an amazing job at keeping you in that flow state when you're in the biome that you're supposed to be in, but it completely drops the ball in all of these surrounding biomes. It doesn't make sense why a tiny goblin or a regular wolf is far more scary than a giant troll that uses a literal tree as a weapon. I mean, one of these trolls can level a forest, for crying out loud. I'm not saying that each biome shouldn't get harder, not at all, but I think there needs to be more of a balance. I should be able to take it extremely careful and strategic in some of the later biomes, and be able to deal with 1 or 2 of their more average enemies if I need to, within reason of course. And I also feel like some enemies should just straight up be a struggle until you're in that late game content. The fact is, when I go back to explore those older biomes, I just get kind of bored. Grey dwarfs and skeletons and trolls just aren't that difficult once you have like iron armor. And the main reason that a lot of this happens is due to the importance of armor and weapons, and how they pretty much gatekeep your progression. I did some research and I found quite a few ideas on how some of these could be combated, and the most simple solution to me would be to decrease the amount of damage that these more common enemies in these later biomes do. For example, wolves, goblins, draugrs, etc. And then take advantage of the star system that they have in the game that makes these enemies significantly stronger when players enter things like villages and tombs. That way they can still have the experience of exploring exploring these areas a little early on, and then it really makes you have to be prepared for these tombs and villages that have a lot of the items that are related to progression. Another suggestion I found online was adding a sort of true damage to the game. The idea is that each enemy has a sort of true damage that they would deal to the opponent that can't be blocked by any armor, and then there's damage on top of that that is affected by armor. So for example, a Grey Dwarf might deal 4 true damage and then 6 armor damage. So if you had no armor, you would take 10 damage, but if you had armor, you might only take 5. I think these are a couple interesting ideas, but I'm curious what you guys think in the comments. While we're on the topic of armor and weapons, I think it's time to address one of the biggest elements in the room, which is the grind for metal. I really like how they handle a lot of the metal systems. I don't mind that they're generally biome specific, and I love how until you get to super late game, you can't teleport metal and you're forced to bring it back by boat. It forces a lot more discovery and strategy when you're collecting these valuable resources. Where this becomes a big problem though is the sheer amount of metal that you have to collect. Just to get a full set of iron armor, you have to have 60 iron, and that doesn't count any tools you need, any armor upgrades you want to make, or anything like that. That's just for 3 pieces of armor. And then if you have a friend that you're playing with, double that. If you have 2 friends, triple that. This causes an insane grind for these resources like bronze, silver, and iron due to how crucial these are for progression. We already talked about how important armor is in the game. This could be toned down a little bit, I think, with some of the fixes I suggested earlier, but another problem that happens with this current system is that metals become almost completely irrelevant once you complete the biome that they come from. Yeah, you can use some of these metals for things like home decor and such, but for the most part, you just need enough bronze to get you past the Black Forest, enough iron to get you past the swamp, enough silver to get you past the mountains, etc, etc. This ties back to the original backtracking discussion from earlier. It's just not interesting to backtrack in this game. You never really have a reason to go back and explore these prior biomes, and quite frankly, the game makes you grind out these biomes so hard that you don't really want to go back to them. This structure makes each biome feel more like a level you're supposed to complete instead of a gradual climb to get stronger and stronger. I wish that they made some of the initial armor pieces you use these metals for a lot cheaper, while continuing to use these ores over time in the next biome or two. I think this will make a much healthier economy by encouraging players to interact with these surrounding biomes instead of just focusing on one at a time. With all this talk about metals and exploration, I think it's time we talk about one of the largest missed opportunities in this game. Valheim absolutely nailed the feel of steering a boat, the atmosphere created by the ocean and the weather, and the massive waves that make you feel genuinely terrified your first time or two sailing. That first time or two you go on a big sailing trip, it feels tense yet exciting, but soon you realize that's not really the case. Throughout the entire expansive ocean of your Valheim world, there are only 2 entities that you can encounter, with only one of those being hostile. These are incredibly exciting moments when you first encounter them. I was flat out terrified the first time I ran into a kraken and had to mine its barnacles. When it started shaking, I thought I started a boss fight, but time after time, nothing ever happened. It just sank into the ocean, I collected the resources, and that was it. The same sort of thing goes for serpents. The first time I heard that loud screech right next to my boat, I thought I was absolutely cooked. And though the serpent puts up a decent fight towards the start of the game, once you have a decent boat, you can easily outsail it, and it would take forever to destroy your boat if it tried. These are the only 2 things you will ever encounter in the entire ocean up until you get to the Ashlands. I absolutely love the system of not being able to teleport metal, but I just wish there was some stakes to it. Right now, after a while, sailing just starts to feel like a chore. I find the majority of the time I spend sailing just scrolling through TikTok. For this to be such a large part of the game, I'm surprised at just how little they've done with it. And I'm hoping that once the game officially gets out of early access, the sea feels almost like a biome of its own. Early game Valheim is awesome. Starting off with nothing and slowly uncovering all of the magic behind this world is one of its strongest areas. Unfortunately though, outside of bosses, I think that some of these elements get introduced a bit too late in the game. The first 4 or 5 biomes really just feel like a generic survival game with a few cool twists here and there. Don't get me wrong, it's an extremely well done survival game, but the game completely changes once you hit the Mistlands and Ashlands. I just think that for whatever reason, the developers pushed magic back a lot further than they should have. Now, part of this could be due to budget. I mean, I'm sure that they did not expect the game to blow up the way that it did, but with only a couple exceptions, it's really not until the mountains that you start interacting with these more magic systems in the game. But even that's limited to things like, oh cool, my hammer freezes enemies so it makes them slower. Once you make it to the Mistlands though, they did this element of the game absolute justice. Playing the Mistlands for the first time was genuinely one of the most fun experiences I've had playing a game. I often describe the Mistlands as just a completely different game in general due to how different it is from all 5 prior biomes. I think Valheim just has too long and awkward of a transitional period from a very grounded survival game into a game where you're able to use magic systems and literally sacrifice your own health and safety in order to possibly turn a fight around. I'm not saying that the entire magic system needed to be exposed before the Mistlands, but I would have loved to see some more magical variety in the weapons themselves, more than just like dealing basic stat adjustments to an enemy. I think that would really help the game feel a bit less repetitive, especially in that mid-game area. Valheim's strengths entirely outweigh its weaknesses, and it's pretty likely that they do adjust some of this before the final 1.0 version comes out. But what do you all think? Do you think there's anything that I missed? Let me know in the comments. If you like this video, you might enjoy this video about how roguelikes make you addicted and the psychology behind all of it. Anywho, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye!